Today I'm going to be talking about migrating identities in cinema, or the globalization and migration of film. I'll be doing an analysis of Lila Forever and Babel based on readings from Jacob Kazeki, Karen A. Ritzengoff and Cynthia J. Miller in their book Border Visions, Identity and Diaspora in Film. Before we can talk about the two films, we first have to understand the meaning of borders in film. The medium of film has the ability to visually capture the processes of the journeys of discovery and transgression people face. This ability to depict both fictional and non-fictional journeys in various cultural contexts is relevant to the formation of identity. How do we negotiate our differences both at home and abroad while travelling outside of our comfort zones? Filmmakers have addressed border crossing since cinema's conception because the concept of leaving your home and settling in an unfamiliar place is the most common and often most traumatizing experience of human existence. At the time the authors were writing this book, there were several political conflicts, most notably between Israel and Palestine in the Middle East. Other big conflicts at the time included North and South Vietnam, extremist rebels seizing the capital of the Congo, and more violent uprisings in Syria. The role of social media is more visible than even 10 years ago in starting debates and social movements across state and national boundaries. Filmmakers often try to capture these moments in an effort to express their complex nature through images, which creates and explores metaphors of home, travel, and border crossing. The authors have addressed border crossings as a form of exploration, stretching beyond personal boundaries as well as the physical transitions that travelling entails. Many of the journeys are linked to physical and structural violence as a reason or consequence of leaving wherever they call home. Many of these entail personal sacrifices and are often marked by confusion and doubt. Some factors challenging the borders that exist in our modern world include different ethnic groups, varied economic interests, inequality between standards of living, diverse religious communities, and post-colonial powers. Liminal spaces like rivers, oceans, deserts, and mountains are seen as more natural borders of countries, as these divide states, countries, and continents in ways that slow down the natural flow of migration. Test our human ability to survive. They test our human ability to survive, but doing this correctly often fills the traveller with the joy of being alive, which opens up the opportunity to tell a story and to create metaphors of crossing borders between life and death, good and evil, or reality and dream. There is a wide range of border metaphors in film. There can be labour laws in a dystopic future, variations of existing borders in different points of history, and ethnic wars and their role in creating personal and collective memories. Past conflicts and borders that no longer exist are still visible in the narratives and the collective memory that has been captured through film. The first film I'll be talking about is Lila Forever. This is a 2002 Russian-language Swedish-Danish drama directed by Lukas Moodysson. The film takes place in an unnamed republic of the former Soviet Union. Referring back to the rating, this is a prime example of a border that no longer exists, yet has been immortalized in the form of film, creating a collective memory of a past conflict. The film follows a young girl named Lilia and her life after being abandoned, and there are two main focus points of reference to migration and borders that trigger the events of the rest of the film. The first point of focus is Lilia's mother leaving, denouncing her and removing herself from Lilia's life completely. At the beginning of the film, Lilia's mother leaves for America with her new boyfriend, leaving Lilia behind in her home country.
Если мы сейчас не поедем...
This is a catalyst for all of the events in the film, and later on we find out that her mother has actually removed herself completely from Lilia's life, and that she is truly now alone in the world. Lilia is left to face the struggle of living in the Soviet Union alone and afraid, with only one real good friend called Volodya, a child constantly hiding from his abusive alcoholic father. All of her friends from the beginning of the film have left her behind when Natasha lies, telling everyone else that the money that she got from prostitution actually belonged to Lilia, causing all of her friends to hate her, and at one point in the film gang up and actually sexually assault her. She forms a tight bond with Volodya as they are both now the outcasts of the group that they live within. She has no money apart from the small amount her mother left, meaning that in order to live, she ends up having to become a prostitute as it's one of the only ways she can make money. Her mother had planned to send more money, but this was obviously not going to happen, and her aunt, who was entrusted to look after her, showed no regard for her health and safety. Refers back to the reading, as it was stated that moving out of your home and settling into an unfamiliar setting is sometimes traumatizing. While Lilia didn't physically move to a new country, she got abandoned by her only family and had to navigate an entire new world in which she has to fend for herself. We followed her on a journey of discovery that the world is uncaring, unforgiving, and dangerous. Lilia having to go to clubs to sell her body ends up being a catalyst for the second half of the film and the second point of focus. She meets Andre at a club, who, after taking her on a couple of dates, suggests that she should move back to Sweden with him. This is where we transition into the second border by moving to a completely new country. Lilia decides to move to Sweden with who she thinks is her boyfriend. She leaves Volodya behind after suggesting that he could come with them. This parallels what happened to her at the beginning of the movie. Lilia was the only person in Volodya's life who cared about him, and losing her this way causes him to take his own life to avoid having to live with his father any longer. Lilia thinks that by moving to Sweden she'll have a better life, in which she won't be forced to fend for herself anymore as she's with Andre. However, when she gets to Sweden, he disappears and is taken to an apartment by an older man. She's still in good spirits until it becomes clear that she's being held hostage by a pimp and will be forced into further prostitution, otherwise she'll be killed by either him or the police if she gets sent back to her home country.
Help me! Run away! If you run away, I kill you! I kill you!
As we enter the final moments of the film, Lilia attempts to escape but is caught and beaten, and this is when Volodya, now appearing as an angel, comes to her and helps her get out for good. She runs away and comes across a bridge that she was seen at in the beginning of the film, and much to Volodya's protesting, she jumps off the bridge to her death. In this portion of the film, we can see what was referred to as saying that violence is often a cause or consequence of leaving home. Lilia ran away from home with a man she'd known for a few days at most, with hopes of starting a better life, but was met with violence, assault, and being held hostage, all because she came from another country and was an easy target. The second film I'm going to be talking about is Babel, a 2006 multi-narrative psychological drama in which there are 4 main storylines that we follow, all of which take place around different parts of the world. You have Morocco, Japan, America, and Mexico. We're following a rebellious deaf teenager in Japan, a family of goat herders and a married couple in Morocco, and a nanny looking after the married couple's children in both America and Mexico. The 4 separate storylines are all connected by one key event, or rather one key item, a rifle. The film primarily deals with the concept of one person's actions having an effect on other people all over the globe, and how a rise of communications like news outlets and people who typically would never have met or interacted with each other be connected by actions or events. This refers to the reading because the film tackles the idea that one person's actions can have border-crossing effects. This is also an example of globalization. The narrative in the film isn't told in a linear fashion, so we aren't told each story individually, rather simultaneously. The characters are all linked by time more than anything else, which is something we can see now thanks to the fact that we can quickly communicate with one another in the modern world. The natural borders, being the fact that all of the characters are in countries separated by oceans and land, are broken down as Yasujiro, tipping his Moroccan tour guide with a rifle, sets off a chain of events. He kicks off the events in Morocco, which then travel back through to America, causing Amelia to take the kids to Mexico, and as we see throughout the film, Yasujiro also carried the events back to Japan as he is investigated with regards to the fact that he gave the rifle to the goat herders. Another example in reference to the reading is breaking down the cultural borders within the film. When Amelia brings Richard and Susan's children to Mexico for the wedding, the children are afraid as their parents had warned them that Mexico was too dangerous. When they arrive and start joining the other kids, they begin to let go of some of their fear and begin enjoying themselves. This is until they witness one of the grown-ups ripping the head off a chicken. This represents the idea that we create our own borders by not taking the time to understand other cultures, and because we've done this, we end up being disgusted, freaked out by, or scared of other cultures. And through the film, we can help break down these borders by exposing ourselves to different ways of life. Tying in with creating our own borders, the tourists on the bus with Richard and Susan are a visual representation of borders in society created by mass fear. When they are stuck in the village waiting for help to get to Susan, the other tourists insist that the bus needs to take all of them away from the village because they're afraid of standing in a village when there are terrorists around. This is despite the fact nobody saw who shot Susan, and they are running simply with the idea that it was a terrorist because they are in an area that would be considered to inhabit terrorists. And the media outlets are reporting the incident to other countries labelled as an act of terrorism without any clear evidence to suggest it. This is significant because this is what frequently happens in real life. We let the media and ourselves create fear that divides us, and by seeing this film, we can consciously see that this is a flawed way of thinking and can start to break down these borders once again. So, to basically summarise everything up, through my reading and analysing of Lila Forever and Babel, I have come to learn that migration and globalisation in cinema is not only more common than you would think, but also more important. Through the depiction of characters trying to adapt to a new and unfamiliar setting in their lives in both Lila Forever and Babel, as well as seeing the consequences they face, whether it's trauma or enjoyment, can help us relate to them and gain more knowledge on their experiences and how similar they are to real life. We can also create a more caring and understanding environment in the real world, in which we learn from the experiences of the characters and put that into practice to help real people struggling have a better experience.